Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan. I'm glad to have all of you with me today. Today, I do have a very special guest. I am joined by someone who has a background as a naturopathic doctor, quantum scientist, linguist, and theologian, and she seeks to empower individuals on their journey to being whole and healthy. Please welcome Dr. Sharnael.
Hello, Dan. So nice to be with you tonight. So excited to talk to you all the way in Michigan. That's so cool. We
Yeah,
could do this.
yeah, I'm glad to have you with me today. And I forgot to ask, where are you from?
I'm actually from Montana, but my dad grew up in Michigan, and right now we're living in Louisiana, which is not Michigan or Montana. Completely different everything. But
Well,
here we are.
Well, this time of year, I think I would take Louisiana over Michigan.
You know what? I agree with that. 100 million%. Like, I do not miss winter at all. Yeah. It seems
Yeah.
cold here, actually, but not compared to you guys. That's for sure. I literally have this, I'm bundled up, but
Well, Dr. Sharnell, I'm excited to have you with us today. Um, as I alluded to, you're all about helping people feel better and empowering people. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
wow. Yeah. Okay. We can,
That's a loaded
we,
question.
right? I mean, where do I begin? Well, I was born. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I actually grew up in a military household, so we traveled quite a bit. My dad retired, and we ended up in Louisiana when he had a job opportunity here, which was a little bit, like I said, different because I mostly lived in the northern states, and then I lived overseas quite a bit in Europe, in Germany, and England. But yeah, I was not introduced to a whole lot of um, anything paranormal or spiritual or anything like that as far as like my parents talking about it freely or, anything. But I've had some really cool, interesting things that happen as a kid and later on. And, I kind of got intrigued, but just by the spiritual walk and kind of thought that that might be an avenue for me. I didn't know how. I just knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to be in service. I wanted to make sure people felt like they were loved and taken care of. And I kind of thought maybe I would be a veterinarian because I really love animals. Um, but I actually really wanted to be more on a spiritual type thing. And so when we moved to Louisiana, people go to church quite a bit here, or at least they did then. I'm not in a particular church or religion, and wasn't at the time, but I got invited to one that kind of led to someone giving me a Bible. I was intrigued by that. I did go to Bible school and seminary. That isn't my walk anymore. There's a lot I learned from that and appreciate about it, and I do believe in, I guess, a a god of or a energy source or something out there that or in here really everywhere that leads us and speaks to us and guides us and helps us with that GPS God positioning system. I really look to help people go within instead of seeking any kind of rules or programming or any of that kind of stuff. And I ended up actually getting kind of sick when I was working in full-time ministry. Physically, I was ill for about 7 years, which led me to meet some people who do like energy work, and they were medical doctors, but they had all these weird machines and like biohacking things like red light therapy and PEMF and hyperbaric chamber and ozone therapy. And actually, a lot of this is way more mainstream. I'm talking about in like 2009. So it's been a minute, and this is kind of talked about now. Um, but that led me to want to go back to school and be on a more naturopathic way instead of the whole Western medicine situation, which I was not getting a whole lot of answers from. And and had a really good helper, an MD who did all of these things, who kind of guided me a bit. And coming home from meeting him, I had another strange encounter that really pointed me to this direction. And so I was like, okay, I'm 37, I'm divorced, I have 3 kids under 7, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm going back to school again. And went back to school and kind of pursued helping people in this vein. I thought that I would just continue to use the information for the sake of speaking at conferences and retreats and things like that, like I'd done as a traveling minister. But now I thought I would teach more on this kind of stuff. But I started getting invitations to wellness centers and speaking there and wellness conferences. And the church was not happy about that. They kind of thought, oh my God, she's like leaving the church. It's secular. It was really weird and odd. And I just thought, that makes no sense to me. I have like the biggest ministry now outside of the walls of this building, and you're upset with that. So I don't know. I just was kind of like, I think I'm not really fitting into this situation anymore, and kind of just pursued this. And I do have a practice now. I just opened a practice in July of this year, but before that, literally from 2014 to now, I had been doing phone consultations and just doing the old school, going to people's house or meeting out with people, and kind of the Waltons, or what is it, Michael Landon? I don't know, those kind of doctors. And when the C word happened a few years ago, I don't know, some platforms don't like you to use it. That became super normalized for medical doctors to do on the phone consultations. Well, I had already been doing it for years, so it was an easy slide. And like I said, I still teach, I write books, I have online conferences, I have online classes. I just want people to know how to take care of themselves and what to do with their bodies, what to do spiritually, mentally, how to connect with that voice, so we're not moved in one direction or another just by pressure, or what because someone said, or all these other kind of things that sometimes can dictate people and thinking that they don't have choices. And we really do have a lot of great, healthy choices. So that's where I'm at. I have a podcast too, and I do stuff like what you do, and interview some cool people, and we talk about Bigfoot and UFOs and the paranormal and angels and energy beings. And I'm really fascinated by all of that too, because of just my background. But it sounds
Yeah.
like you are too. I'd
Oh
like to
yeah.
hear your story a little bit.
Well, Dr. Sharnael, you mentioned having some difficulties with your health, some health issues, and you started going the more natural route then. Were you on a whole bunch of like pills and stuff before that?
Seriously, yeah. Like they give me one, I had side effects. They give me another. Yeah. It was mental gymnastics, Dan. I had 33 meds over that period of 6, 7 years of being sick. And some of them were all at once. I mean, when I would travel, I was on 6 planes a week for 20 years doing conferences, and I had maps and mental, you know, take this with that, and don't take this with that, and this in the morning and that at night, and these don't go together, and these have to go together, and this is with food and that's with water. And honestly, I didn't feel any better. Like, it wasn't doing anything. So when people told me to go see this guy in Mississippi, I was teaching a course on dreams and visions, and just how to interpret dreams and hear what, get direction from paying attention to those inner things. The lady saw my suitcase full of stuff, and she was like, what the heck? I was like, I know, right? Like, it's a little bit overwhelming. And here, I'm just taking this pill. She probably thought I was just insane. She's like, you should go see my friend. He's an MD and blah, blah, blah. I was like, you know what? Cool. That's good. I've seen like a lot of those guys. I'm not getting anywhere. I don't want any more drugs. But it ended up being like a real big catalyst for my entire life shifting, because I walked in there and I was like, I'm such a geek. Like, I'm super geeky about like cool, futuristic kind of thing. So I'm like, what is this? What is that? I was like, all the stuff that he has, like I have all those things now, and I'm like playing with them and all the new tools that come out. I'm like, let's try this, let's try that. And I love helping people like reverse this stuff without all those meds, without all the side effects, without radiation and chemo. And, not that I think, people got to do what they think they need to do, but there's so many cures out there. I don't know if I could say that, but there's ways that people can get well or stay well. And that's a big thing too, Dan. Why wait till you get sick all the way at the end and then like try to hurry up and fix it? Like, how about like just use good choices along the way and just teaching people basic things like drink water, exercise, eat good, don't eat sugar, some of the stuff that like probably your grandparents, my grandparents, you're probably way younger than me, maybe your great grandparents, but kind of the old school stuff where it's like, you know, we kind of lost some of that, it's kind of like McDonald's and whatever's fast and microwaves and, there's a lot of processed stuff that's not even really food.
Yeah,
So
you mentioned exercise. Don't eat a lot of sugar, eat healthy. Um, that's kind of like common sense stuff to stay healthy. But so why does so many of us have trouble with it?
I think it's quick, it's easy, commercials, all there's a lot of programming, there's a lot of propaganda to, eat this pizza, eat McDonald's. And I'm not slamming anybody. I'm not saying I've never had pizza. I'm not saying I've ever had McDonald's, but I also know that there's some really good choices that when we're conscious about what we're eating and what we're putting in our body, it's like, what are the red dyes? What are the chemicals? What are the synthetics? Who made this? Where did, I'm not a big hunter. I don't like killing stuff. So I'm not a vegetarian either because plants are just as alive. And there's a lot of science to that with Clive Baxter and other people that they hear the plants scream and all that. So it's like, well, what's left to eat? So I will eat meat if someone else kills it. And I try to do grass fed and organic and, all the good things possible when I can. And when I can't, I don't beat myself up for it. But I think like at least trying, like every little bit helps, and good water, and, there's chemtrails and there's pesticides and herbicides, it's like, let's do everything we can to just get away from as much as that as possible, and make some
Yep,
better choices.
yep. Charnel, do you believe in miracles?
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite subjects.
Have you always?
I don't know if I really knew that as the terminology, but I guess once I got a Bible, I was like, oh, there's a lot of cool things in here. And it made me have faith for the supernatural. And it's like, I had this like big drive and curiosity to be like, why aren't we doing what those guys are doing? Like, why aren't people healed instantly? Why aren't people transporting and bilocating and doing all these things that are clearly in there? And I look at the Bible now more as quantum physics because a lot of it's been so in my opinion, and looking at all the translations, it's just been reversed and changed, and a lot of it's up for interpretation and whoever wrote it the next time, but if and I do believe there was a Jesus of some kind. I don't believe he's the only teacher in the world. He happens to be a great teacher for me. And I'm like, geesh, why are more people not doing some of these miraculous things and these supernatural things? This should be what we all do. We have the mechanics, we have the DNA, we have the technology, and there are equations to work with what we have to create that and to have that moment to moment to moment, instead of waiting on someone else to do it for us or hoping or praying. And I'm not against prayer, but in my experience, a lot of praying had to do with, well, we're just going to wait on God, and maybe God's waiting on us. you know?
You got to be proactive about it, you know.
Yes, action is really important. I don't believe in just sitting on the couch and wishing things to happen. I do believe in manifesting. I do believe in karma. I do believe in, the laws of the land, cause and effect. I believe that, and I say all this and I'm like, my belief means nothing really too. So this is just my opinion, means nothing. Take it or leave it. And I could change my mind in 5 minutes, just saying, because I try to stay really open, because I've been very, very wrong for a long time. And then I was like, oh, I don't even believe that anymore, So, um, but miracles have to do with this scientific field, this aura, this biofield that we have. And the biofield language, uh, it's made up of our thoughts, what we feel, what we're talking about. There's a radiation from all of those things. There's a radiation from our organs. There's a radiation from every cell, which we have trillions, and all of that goes into this field. The average field is about 5 feet. I have tested some people as far as 20 feet. But that radiation goes out. It's tangible. Some people feel it. Some people see it. There are cameras that pick it up now. And it's also it's a magnet. There's magnetism in that field. And so there's this torrid really of moving out and coming in, moving out and coming in. And we're just in the center of this torrid field. And then the earth has a field, and then the plants and the animals, everything has this field. And literally everything we think matters, and everything we feel matters. And the heart is literally the biggest magnet of all. We have some of this that radiates and magnetizes, but this is the biggest pull. So you can actually be thinking about something really positive and be like saying your mantras and saying, perfect words and thinking perfect things. But if you're feeling like really crappy about it and you're just like, this is never going to happen, this sucks, this is so stupid, this never works for me, it never worked for my grandparents, my mom, everyone, have that victim feeling, that will go out, and you'll have like a mixed equation. So you'll have these positives and you have this like negative. So you'll have these 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of deal, and creates this like energetic purgatory. And it can cause you to keep having these same patterns where it's just like, oh, this again, and then you're with this guy, but it's the same crap. And then you go to this job and it's the same crap. And you're like, I'm changing all these things. Common denominator here is me, so what's wrong with this situation? Maybe I got to do something to change this up and rescript it and reverse it and get a new outcome, right? Because it's like, why do you want to be stuck in some holding cell of energetic purgatory that gets you nothing but where you've been? So our karma, or our energy, or our radiation actually goes out to find that match. We only get what we are. And then if it's bad by default because of programming or genetics or whatever, that's actually a gift. It seems really crappy when it's happening, but if you're aware that you are the one that created it, then you could be like, wow, okay, the bad news is I made this, but the good news is I made this, so I can unmake this and I can make something different. And when I got sick with cancer and was in a really bad relationship and lost a job and was going through a divorce and like all of these things that were going on with me, that was my come to Jesus, or if you want to call it that, or just like this awakening of just like, dude, how did I get here? Like, what the hell? And how do I get myself out of this? And I really started looking at these laws and had this encounter, and I had this download of these equations, the field, echo wave, standing wave, like all this stuff. I was like writing everything. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? This information is insane. And I had a whole book about it. And sometimes I still go back to the book and go, what do I do about this now? And I've had some crazy things happen, like truly have bilocated. People have seen me in multiple places. I have found things that were lost by calling them back in and just saying, well, I remember that I have this in my hand now. And so I'm so glad I have this and blah, blah, blah. And within minutes, there it is. Or I'll see it in my mind of where I left it. And I'm like, oh, and I have some crazy miracles like that. And now I'm teaching people how to do that. And it's really fun. It's fun to teach kids. It's fun to teach adults. And kids are even using this book in their homeschool curriculum, and they're doing it. And it's like, I get the testimonies and people send things and I'm like, yay, the sooner the better. Let's teach them all, right?
You mentioned you have a bunch of clients that you work with. Is that over the phone?
Yeah, I do see
Okay.
people in person in my practice, but for 12 years, 13 years, I did everything over the phone because I would go to these conferences, sometimes 10 people, sometimes 40,000 people. They would hear me speak and then they would call my office and be like, hey, my sister is dealing with XYZ. What do I do? I was getting flooded with these emails and texts, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to help everybody. So I just started setting up consultations, and then we would do biofeedback where I could do a scan and kind of see what's going on diagnostically, send frequencies back to them, and or do a consultation with the frequencies and say, well, based on my naturopathic thing, looking at these diagnostics, I would do X, Y, and Z, and then get back with me and see how you're feeling. And, whether it's parasites, Lyme disease, maybe they have fungus or mold or deficiencies in different vitamins or supplements, or maybe they're not sleeping well or their hormones are jacked up for some reason, or it'll show even energetic inconsistencies like the 5G, and maybe you're in a computer or blue light all day long and it's affecting your rhythm of your sleep. Or there's so many things that we can look at even long distance and go like, hey, how's this going, how's that going, and just give a little guidance. And just a few tweaks can really make a big deal. Not to mention the frequencies. The first time that someone did, the doctor that I was telling you about, he kept going, oh, I got this new gadget. Every time he gets something new, he's like, can I try this on you? I'm like, yeah, try it on me. So I was long distance, and he's like, this is a long distance thing. You don't even have to come in real life. I was like, okay, try it. So I kind of forgot about it, Dan. And like weeks later, I was like, hey, did you do that thing? Because I was just wondering what happened. And he's like, oh, I totally forgot. I'll do it. So I was like, totally forgot again. And then one day I come home, sitting on the couch, like 2 p.m, and I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling kind of tired. I never take naps. Like, do not. I just cannot sleep during the day. I don't know I feel like maybe it's FOMO. I'm like, I might miss something. But I was like sitting on the couch. I'm like, oh man. Whew. I told my husband, I'm like, I am super tired, like pregnant tired. And I knew I wasn't pregnant. And so I was like, I wonder if he's doing that thing. And sure enough, I mean, I conked out sitting up in my couch with the lights on, animals coming in and out, kids coming home from school, snoring, sitting up, like never happens to me. So I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, grab my phone. I was like, did you do that? And I got a text at like 5 minutes to 2 from Dr. Lucky. And he was like, hey, I'm about to do it. I was like, dude, that works. I was like, what happened? And so he did it again a few days later, actually. Same thing happened. Conked me like so out. And I'm still logically going, how does this work from all the way over there? What is this is impossible. But what's crazy is the next day our electricity went out. And I called the electricity company and they're just like, oh, okay, we'll come out. They come out. They're like, hey, where's the little box deal? I got to look at your meter stuff. And I was like, I don't know. So I called my husband and he's like, oh, it's over there, whatever. So they go and he's like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and I'm going to fix this. And I got to call the office and they're going to send something. And they do something like over the phone and then everything's back on. A few days later, our DirecTV went out. Same thing. Somebody in India like calls me and they're like, oh, I'm going to do this, turn this off. I'm going to send this to you and then turn it back on and it's going to work. I'm like, how are you doing this from India? And then my Jeep, I drive a Jeep and my satellite went out and I called the 800 number on the little screen and they're like, oh, they were in like Philadelphia or somewhere. And they're like, oh, hey, pull over, turn it off. We're going to send you this beam thing from us. And So like all these things keep showing up. That's like long distance. I'm like, okay, I hear you. This is real. And I jumped in and I've been helping people doing biofeedback for I guess 6 years now. And it's funny because my co-host is in the UK and I was working on his shoulder a couple weeks ago and I had it running just to help get the pain and inflammation and just kind of get things to rebalance and recalibrate. And I had a patient come in, so I had to turn it off and use it. And literally 10 minutes after I turned it off to work on this other guy, my WhatsApp on my phone comes up and he was like, "Hey, did you just turn it off?" I was like, "How did you know that? You're in England, you know?" And my grandmother fell and was really sick. She's in Montana and I'm down here. The doctors couldn't figure out what's going on. And they're like, we don't know. And everyone's upset. And my mom's upset. And I was like, send me her picture. Send me her voice. I'm going to do a scan. It showed she had a UTI. She was dehydrated. La, la, la. I called the doctor. I'm like, these are the things. And he's like, what? And I'm like, just test it. And they like test in their life. He's like, how did you know that? I'm like, I'm magic. No, I'm just kidding. I'm like, this is the technology that we have, and we've had it a long time, but it's kind of been suppressed and starting to really come a little more mainstream, which is fun.
Sharnael, let's talk a little bit about things that people can do for themselves. Are you a big proponent of crystals and aromatherapy?
Yes. Yeah. Can you see all the oils back there? Like, I have a few, and I do have like a crystal card deck, and I have like all my little crystals that teach like what all they do emotionally, physically, mentally, and how they work with conscious language, how they work with other essential oils or companion oils, because frequencies matter. So if you can anchor in multiple layers of the same frequency, it will hold the frequency easier and like hold it in. Um, but yeah, I kind of thought that was another thing that anything in my church background would have said, oh my God, that's the devil. But even though there's 1,600 references in the Bible, let me think about this one. So yeah, at the name calling of, you're a witch and blah, blah, I'm like, am I? So, but I started looking at the neuroscience of it and the frequency of it. And if you have an actual real oil or a crystal that's real, not some man-made China thing you got on eBay, it has frequency and it holds frequency. And if you bring it into your field, this little thing right here that's all around us, it'll stabilize chaos. Like if you have some scrambled stuff going on and you introduce that, it literally will just calm down the field. If you have any energetic 5G stuff going on, it will calm down the field. It will actually absorb the negative energies and your scan looks clear. I can tell on the scan if someone uses crystals. I can tell on the scan if someone uses some sort of EMF protector on their cell phone. I'm like, well, obviously you have some kind of protection there because it's showing up that you're good. And they're like, oh my gosh, how did you know that? I'm like, because I have this truth teller thing here in this software that tells me all the things, all of your little secrets. So, but yeah, I have fun with all of this, and it was just fun kind of seeing how they all work together and why. And do you use anything like that? Do you guys use natural stuff?
Uh, and my wife has some crystals, and again, where I live, it's starting to become more popular. I think more places are selling them.
I'll have to send you my book and I'll send you my deck and you guys check it out and see what you think.
Oh, okay,
Just
cool.
send me your address and I'll pop it in the mail for you guys.
Oh, thank you. Do
Yeah.
you have a favorite crystal?
Oh gosh. Do you? Depends on the day, right? Like how do you pick? It's like saying who's your favorite kid or who's your, I probably really drawn to labradorite more for some reason, like that blue, kind of shimmery. It's supposed to be for communication and intuition, but pink quartz is a biggie for me right now. And actually, this one is supposed to be about unconditional love. And I think we could all use a little bit of that. um, but any of the black ones are really good just for people who are in service or around a lot of people and they don't really I don't consider myself an extrovert or an introvert. I like being around people, but I also really get really mean if I'm not alone. So I got to have like both. But these kind of things will help absorb, when there's a lot of external, like energetic chatter. And I don't know. What is your favorite? What are you drawn to?
I don't know. It's not something that I've really gotten too involved in. Like I said, my wife has bought a few of them, um, but it's not something I've really looked into too much myself. I'm interested in it. It just
Yeah.
uh,
And when it was just a pretty rock, I mean, I was like, those are pretty rocks, but I don't get it. But when I got into the frequency, and I'm like, oh, this is frequency so and so, and that's frequency so and so, and this does that, and I was like, how is this helping blood pressure? What? This helps with inflammation. This helps with you not wanting to eat sugar. This helps you sleep better. It's like, really? How did that even happen? But there's some kind of equation in there that works with the field that helps things, and even pets, even plants. If you get a plant and you put crystals in the actual plant, the plant will grow better and flourish. It's like, how does living beings, I don't know, Tesla says that crystals are alive. So it's a connection of life with life somehow. I don't really understand it all, but I do love Tesla. I mean, he is right. Is he the coolest?
Charnel, do we have time to hear a little bit more about your paranormal experiences?
Yes, absolutely. So I had an encounter at 4. That's a little bit longer, but I'll talk to you about the one that happened that shifted my life as far as my career and really gave me those downloads. I came out of my bedroom to go into my living room. Um, this is like dealing with sickness, dealing with a separation, divorce, um, lots of negative patterns. I mean, just all of them. Abundance programs, relational programs, just a lot of confusion, just trying to figure out what to do with my life, like a lot of people, right? But really seeking and really open to new things because I knew I was leaving this other path and I was like, what's really real? I don't even know anymore. And I still probably don't in some ways, but I walk in my living room and I have really tall ceilings, and there are these ginormous, like 14, 15, 16. I'm not good with measurements, but really tall, kind of iridescent light type beings that looked very like they weren't solid. They kind of look like the beam me up Scotty kind of. If you ever watched Star Trek, they would just do this like hologram kind of thing and they would pop in like almost like a portal, but there was no portal. It was just them kind of shimmering in and out. And the colors were light and they were like very pastelly, very, very light, pastelly light, like kind of like the really, really light Easter colors, which are now my absolute favorite colors. So when I see like this kind of shimmery, it's like this. I don't know what color that is, but you could see kind of some hues and some pinks and blues. And I was terrified. I was frozen. I thought, oh my God, like, is this real? Is this a dream? Am I in a dream? Like, what's happening to me? But on a physical level, I felt something. I felt it's like all of my soul, all my cells, all of everything on the inside was like vibrating at a really high speed. Like I've never felt like that before, and I don't know if I have ever since then. Sometimes I kind of get that feeling when I'm talking about it, and I always get emotional when I talk about what they were saying. And um, immediately, I just thought in my head, I thought, like, what is going on? I must have looked afraid because I heard one of them say to me, don't be afraid. Now, if these are angels, I don't know. my language at the time was, these are angels. Now I'm like, an angel just means messenger. Like, is this an off planet situation? Is this an alien? Is this some sort of guide? Like, I would love to know, to be honest. Um, One of them looked very female ish. One looked male, more male, and he actually looked like he was from Asia or something, like had almost like an ethnic look. She had more of a Scandinavian. I can only say that my background is Scandinavian, and so all of my cousins look like this, like big, tall women, blonde hair. Anyway, there were books piled all over, huge, ancient, really fat, big books that were really old. And there was this desk, and one of them, the girl came around and sat and was opening the book, one of the books. And I was like so intrigued, but petrified. So I came around and I'm like looking over to kind of see like what's in these books. And she turns around, looks at me, and she said, well, actually, I saw what was in the books. It was records of names, dates, what people were sick of, what people were healed of, and how they were healed. That's what it was, just line per line per line per line per line. And then she looked and said, what do you want? Not with her mouth. Her mouth never moved. And I heard it. And I'm like, what the heck? And was again terrified, because with her voice, it would shake my insides. And I said, I want to be a part of that. And she said, she looks over at the other guy, and he's like, they kind of look at each other and they kind of go, okay. And then she points at me, and this is the part that gets me every time. She points at me really serious, and she says, tell them they're not truly living unless they're living true. She slammed the book. Everything just disappeared. Like, it's just poof, gone. All the books, the desks, these things. And I'm just sitting there shaking. I'm literally like, what the F? Like, I am like, I have to go sit. I couldn't speak for a while. I thought I made it up. I was like, am I crazy? Like, was that a dream? Was I sleepwalking? I still don't know to this day exactly, except for from that moment on, dreams with equations, knowings, like everything just got, like, if I could say it in a made up, like, I don't know how to say it any other way, except I felt like I got really tuned up, like, to this whole different knowing of things, or feeling things, or really sensitive to stuff. And yeah, and then a bunch of other things started happening. People were coming to me. I had already met Dr. Lucky, but moving on from that, there was a man named Dr. Gary Young, and there was a guy named Robert Stevenson, who speaks conscious language. Gary Young deals with frequency, essential oils, spiritual things. And then there was a guy who's a chemist, MD, and an ND, Dr. David Stewart. And they were like, people just started being in my life, like these random things that weren't random. And they all ended up being like major mentors in my life. That then I somehow got involved with Bob Proctor. I'm like, how am I, like, he invites me to this hotel dinner thing, just me and my husband. He spends an hour and a half with me. He's like, I'm going to send you all this stuff. I'm like, what is going on with my life? Like, this is the strangest stuff. And yeah, I went back to school, but I'm meeting all these people and learning all these things. And I don't, in some ways, I think it kind of gave me permission to shift gears a bit, like maybe I needed something to like figure out, like life wasn't over. Like I had maybe a second chance of doing something because I was depressed. I was really depressed, coming from one place and trying to figure out like, okay, divorce, broke, selling my plasma to feed my kids. Like, I mean, it was a lot. And then all of this shifted and I'm like, what in the world? So I wrote everything down as much as possible because I was so afraid. What if this goes away and it's gone and I forget it? And still to this day, when I wake up, if I get stuff, and I'm telling everyone out there, if you get stuff in the middle of the night, like write it down because it will go away. The more we invest in things, the more we take credence and put weight on those little voices and those little kind of hints or God winks, or I don't know what you call them, and really put it down. As you write, you'll get more. You'll think you don't even remember, but as you write, you'll be like, oh yeah, and then the blue shirted guy came out and he told me blah blah blah, and it's some profound, sentence that you're like, whoa, that's deep. It's just like, but we have to kind of like a Kleenex box, take the top, and then another one comes out, take the top, another one, and just, and so yeah, I've been doing my best to get the word out, like that we are so powerful, we are, and we are so loving and kind, and we have so many abilities to create with consciousness and with the architect and within to make whatever we choose and not just accidentally default by the programming or kind of the worldly expectations or what just everybody else does. We can actually go higher and do great things and bilocate and do fun, happy things, create money out of nothing and get a job out of nothing and get new friends and write music and whatever it is you like to do. Like it's all here already inside. Like it's all here. It's just a matter of tapping into that and bringing it to the surface and then sharing it with your world. So that was a biggie. But I've had some weird stuff where I like was missing for 8 hours, lost time, and then people said I'm somewhere else. I mean, I've had some weird stuff. I'm sure you have too. I'd love to hear your story. I have to have you on my show.
Those two beings, was that the only time that you ever saw them? Did they ever reappear later on?
Such a good question. I did during the conversation think, what is your name? She said true. He said living. The name of my practice is Living True. She came to me again with pregnancies, with new job stuff, with people I was going to meet. One time I had a miscarriage. She came to tell me this is about to happen. Like, so yeah, it's been reoccurring. I haven't seen her in a minute. Sometimes I wonder, it's like I hear her. And then sometimes I'm like, well, is that me or is that her or is that my higher self? Like, I don't even know the language. So it's like, is that my future self? Like, what if it's me like in 3030 coming back to tell me, I don't know, right? Like, what do you think it is? Who are these things?
That's very fascinating. Yeah. Well, Sharnael, you do have a website, drsharnael.com.
Yes.
You also have some social media links on there where people can connect with you. What else can people do on your website?
Yeah, so we have the biofeedback. I have my card deck, all my books. I have several books. I have classes online that teach like muscle testing and outcome mapping and ways to live. There's a Science of Miracles online class there that kind of goes into some of the things of how to apply those things and start doing it. I have my podcast on there. If you go to my website and sign up for the newsletter, you get a free class as well. So there's some freebie stuff on there too, and my podcast with a whole bunch of weird and wild, crazy people, authors and directors and actors and fun people that you might be intrigued by, or maybe you're like, no, that's okay, but it's fun. And but yeah, you guys check me out. And one thing I do miss about conferences, I haven't, I just did a big retreat, but I don't do, 6 a week like I was doing before, or 3 a week or whatever. And I miss like the actual hugging and the eye contact and the feeling people's, energy. I love that we can talk from Michigan and Louisiana like this and talk to whoever's listening wherever they are. But I don't get to see their faces. I'm just looking at Dan and Dan's just looking at me, and I don't get to see you guys. So if you're out there and you're like, oh, that was really cool, or I have a question, or what do you think about this, or hey, I just want to say hi. I love seeing images and people. I usually will go to your profile and be like, oh, that's Matt or Susan or whatever, and I'll send good vibes to you and wish you well and appreciate you guys' time just hanging out with us tonight. It was fun hanging out with you guys.
Absolutely. What's the name of your podcast, by the way?
Oh, I guess that's a good thing to say. It's Dr. Sharnael True TV.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir. Going back to
Very.
true again. If you're not living true, we're not living, right? So
And
everything
can
is about truth and authenticity, love, the basics.
I ask who's your friend behind you?
This is Blue. I found him in
Hey,
a
Blue.
wall. Yes.
Oh.
So he's a little feisty. My daughter was in driver's ed, and she called me one day and was like, Mom, I can hear some crying in the wall. And I was like, what? She's like, sounds kind of like a baby. And I was like, are you sure? So she puts the phone up to the wall, and it sounded like a cat crying to me. So I grew up on a farm. So I'm like, running down there. And we had to get like what do you call the thing to break the sheetrock? Like a pick axe thing. He had fell in from the roof with his other siblings that didn't make it, but he was stuck in between a two by fours and just dropped in there. His eyes weren't open or anything, and I was like, mine, I'm taking him. So I
That's
brought him
awesome.
home, bottle fed him, and now he's a little jerk, but he acts like a dog. He literally thinks he's a dog, but it's fun. You have any animals?
I have one cat.
You have a cat too. What's this cat? Which cat? Girl, boy?
Girl, Jara.
What is it?
Jara.
Jara. What does that mean?
Uh,
Do you know?
my wife picked the name.
We have to
there,
find
there,
out. These things are
there's a
important.
there is a meaning behind it. I just can't think of it right now.
Okay. All right. Well,
Oh,
Dan is a powerful name for sure too. If you look at like the biblical aspect, Dan did some cool things. So
yeah.
yes, be
Well,
like
Charnel,
Dan.
yeah. This has been great talking to you. Again, the website drsharnel.com, and thank you so much for coming on.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. You are wonderful. Tell your wife hello. Hope to see you around somewhere. Hope to see all you guys around somewhere, and find me out there in social media land. And Dan, if you're up for it, I'd love to have you on my show and pick your brain about some of these things.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely talk later about that.
Okay,
All
awesome.
right.
Have fun in Michigan. Kiss the ground for me, the cold snow.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you again, and thanks to all my listeners. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And I will see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, guys.